Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. Matthew Dickerson. Tech Talk. Sit back and relax. It's time to talk technology.
Welcome, children of the new age. Welcome. Welcome to the space where we take a peek around the corner into the realm of tomorrow. And welcome to the space where we snatch a glimpse of the future and start making our plans. Welcome, one and all, to Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. And welcome to the microphone, the man who knows so much about technology they named a podcast after him. Welcome, Matthew Dickerson. After all that, I've gone and stuffed up the last name. I'm going to say that again. Welcome, Matthew Dickerson.
Oh, thank you very much for such a...
Dinkerson. There's no N.
A genuine and well thought out introduction. So now I'm going to talk about a silly thing that happened to me during the week. I normally like to talk about some technology, maybe innovation, maybe something exciting, maybe something different that happened to me. But this week I want to talk about how simply we can sometimes get fooled. And I was watching a show, and I won't mention the show because I don't want to be a spoiler, but I was watching a show on Netflix and it had a big component of cybercrime. And in the show, there was a bit of a takeover by some bad guys. And you always know the bad guys because they're the ones dressed in black and drive around in dark black vans.
Yeah,
that's right.
Easy.
It's obvious.
It's so much easier that way.
And so the bad guys took over the US, the entire communications, in fact, everything electronic. So power stations went down, internet went down, etc.
Easy enough, apparently.
Yeah, that's right. It was easy. They just put a bit of malware on a couple of computers and that was it, away it went. So they took down the whole US and froze everything for a minute, and then the show went on exploring how that happened and how it stopped all the rest of it. So again, I won't go into detail there, but while I'm watching the show froze. And I went, oh, what's happening here? And then I thought, oh, that's clever. I'm watching a cybercrime show about everything freezing, and then in the show, it's frozen. I went, oh, that's good.
Do you reckon that was on purpose?
Well, that's what I thought. Like for the first millisecond, I went, what's happened? And then the second millisecond, I went, it's frozen, it's paused. What's going on? Oh, that's so clever. They've done that. And then I thought, I'll just sit back and wait. Obviously, it's just frozen for 5 seconds or so. And I've waited, and 10 seconds and 15. I don't think this is part of the show, you know. And then I've looked around for the remote control. Lo and behold, it's on the ground, and the dog
is chewing it.
No, he just rolled. The dog was sitting on the ground, but he just moved around a bit, just enough to bump the remote control. I've gone, oh, you idiot!
Like, the dog was in on it all the time. Right. Knew exactly what you were watching. I'm going to get this guy.
So I just thought, because my first thought was, wow, that's so clever, and then I went, it was just the dog moving on the remote control. So I laughed for about 5 minutes. I went and told my wife the story. She laughed for about 5 minutes. Like it was such a great thing. But maybe for the next cybercrime movie, maybe that's a good thing to do.
Yeah.
Halfway through the movie, just freeze it.
Just freeze
be reaching for the remote control, looking where their dog is, and then they'll be going, I'm pressing remote control, and then it just starts again. They go, wow, what just happened there? So anyway, technology can fool us so easily.
It's so easily, apparently. Well, look, in today's episode, we're checking out how tech is taking over Major League Baseball and it's coming for your own favourite sport next. We're going to check out why Mark Zuckerberg is laying cable, and I mean record lengths of it. And we'll meet the new kid in the internet streaming playground, shaking things up in a big way. But to kick off, we're zooming back into the flying car scene. It's here at last. We've been anticipating flying cars for some time. Hell, since the Jetsons arrived on TV and back in 1962. But our earlier reports of flying cars on this podcast have been predominantly about human-sized drones. They had a cockpit and a handful of propellers, but distinctly lacked that certain je ne sais cariness. But this new entrant from Alef Aeronautics actually looks like a car. Albeit a car drawn by a cartoonist from the 60s, but it's a car with 4 distinct wheels, Matt.
It does look a bit car-like, doesn't it? And you're right, every other flying car, in inverted commas, air quotes I'm doing here at the moment for those that can't see.
You didn't see that, guys?
on a podcast. So they've typically been something that looks like a drone. So you've had, as you say, a cockpit, you've had 4 arms that go out, and you've had propellers on the end of those 4 arms, and they're calling it a flying car. Well, not really. It's a drone. It's a quadcopter drone.
That's right.
To be technical about
That's what it looks like.
That's right. And that's kind of what it looks like and what it flies like, and it doesn't really drive along the road. And I'm having a bit of trouble parking that in my garage. So car, not quite.
There's no zooming down and taking then off on the freeway. You know?
No, that's what you want, isn't it? You want to be able to drive along the freeway and go, I'm over this. I just want to take off.
Go above everyone. Yep.
That's right. That seems fair and reasonable. And I know Seth Century in his song about science talked about a hoverboard, and so I keep wanting to have a hoverboard. I get some people saying, when are you going to come up with a
It's only a
hoverboard?
matter of time. We'll be covering that in no time.
We're not there with the hoverboard yet, but I reckon we're getting pretty close with the car. So this car, as you say, looks like a car. Now, there's a couple of issues that I have with it. One is the number of passengers. They talk about the number of people it will seat at this stage is 1.5 people. I don't know too many half people. Maybe a child
You
counts
bring
as a half
someone's
person.
torso, right?
Maybe, yeah. You can come in, you just have to decide which half of you wants to get in the car with me. So basically it's one person.
Yeah, okay.
So that still sounds like that single cockpit, but it looks like a car. It drives along the road like a car, not that fast. Its top speed is only about 40 kilometres an hour.
Right.
So not something you go driving across America with, not something you're going to drive long
So it's
distance
kind
with.
of Model T Ford speed.
Yeah, but you think about it, if you're in a New York, an LA, a Sydney, a Beijing, how fast are you going anyway? If you're in the centre of those cities,
Well, hopefully you get some sort of opportunity to go faster than 40 k's an hour.
probably not often though, but
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
right, probably some opportunities.
Yeah.
So the idea of this at this stage, again, this is the first prototype, is that you're in those congested areas. And then I watched a video. So it drove along and there was an SUV parked in front of it simulating congestion. And it got to the SUV and went, you know what? Can't go over it. Can't go go through it. Can't go under it. Can't go around it. I'll go over it. And so it literally then picked up and flew and went across the SUV and then landed on the other side and kept going. Now, it looked unstable. And I would have thought if they're going to put out a video, that video would be the best of. They wouldn't say, let's take the shakiest, most unstable looking flight and put that up.
Maybe it was.
Or maybe it was, I don't know, but it just looked unstable. And the reason, I thought about it more, the reason it was unstable is it's still got 4 propellers, but the 4 propellers aren't out on 4 extendable arms.
Yeah.
The 4 propellers are under the body.
in tight, yeah.
So they're pretty close together. So you don't have a lot of difference, I suppose surface area is what I'd be thinking of there in terms of how far apart those propellers are. So a small change, you think about if you've got a propeller where your front right tyre would be in a propeller with your front left tyre, they're not that far apart. So a slight change in the speed of each of those.
Well, and just the aesthetic of this car too. I mean, you've got, it looks like a typical Yank tank where you've got a really long bonnet front of the car and then the back of the car is also about equally as long and you've got this bubble dome in the middle of it and then these 4 tiny little wheels on the outside. It looks like a cartoonist has drawn it from the 60s, but yeah. Look, this is where we're at now.
That's right. This is the first iteration. Now, they're taking orders. So if you've got got to spare $150.
Unstable as they are.
Unstable as they are, that's right. You can, for $150, you can have a deposit. They've already received 3,300 pre-orders.
Sorry, what was the deposit? $150?
$150. Now, what's interesting about that is that means they've raised $500,000 in pre-orders.
Oh.
Tesla were famous for taking pre-orders, but Tesla got to the stage where they'd raised $1.2 billion in pre-order at one stage. That's the most that I ever heard of them reaching. Now, what was very clever about that was that as a company, you can raise money in different ways. You can raise money by going to a bank and saying, please lend me some money. You can raise money by putting out a share offering and get the community to buy shares and invest in your company, but that dilutes the ownership level. Tesla did something very clever. They said, put a deposit on. It's only a small amount of money. It's refundable if you don't go ahead with it, but suddenly they got an injection of $1.2 billion. So in this case, they've got an injection of $500,000. I'm not sure how much this company's worth at the moment. I'm not sure how far they progressed down their funding model, but an extra $500,000 probably helps in that early development stage. So good luck to them on that. They say that they'll have a car that you can buy, a flying car you can buy by next year. That sounds pretty impressive.
Next year.
So
he's put the deadline on those engineers. They're going, you what?
They'll start production within 12 months. So now it might be one of those things that they say it'll be next year for the next 10 years, but I've seen that happen before too.
But they've still got to get approval from motoring organisations and aeronautical.
That's right.
Yeah, okay. All right.
So there's a bit to go there. $300,000 you'll pay for it. So you have $150 deposit,
Yeah.
which I assume is non-binding. So you can pay your deposit. And
What are the road rules and the flight rules for these cars too? We haven't got that far yet,
Now,
but they're coming out next year.
apparently.
Here they come.
Now, in terms of road rules, it just conforms to normal road rules. So that should be easy.
Yeah.
It's a car that satisfies all the safety standards.
Until you decide to take off.
off,
That's
and
not a
then-
normal road rule, right?
No, that's right. So then, I don't know at what stage the the flying rules, the FAA, if you like, start to get involved and say, hold on, you're now flying. We want to be in on these rules as well. So I think the idea here is you come along to a set of traffic lights, you go, damn, I'm banked up. I'm going to go through three sets of green and red.
Places to go.
That's right. So you just hop over the congestion and keep flying until everyone starts hopping over that.
Yeah.
And then at intersections, I've seen people have little fender benders where they bump into each other. At 5 kilometres an hour, it's just a bit annoying, a bit of scratch on the car. That's about it. But at 5 kilometres an hour, at 20 metres above the ground, that might be a little more calamitous. So there's a whole range of things to happen here, but at least we're progressing. This particular company says that they'll get to the stage where they've got a 4-person flying sedan by 2035. So there's still some
Not
way
a
off.
4.5 person?
Not 4.5, no, not
okay.
even 3.5.
3.5?
Four full-size people, apparently. And it's a good point. It's almost you'd need to have some scales next to the car. You want to come for a ride in my car, James? Just jump on the scales, tell me how heavy you are.
Yeah,
that'll make a bit of a difference.
Surely there's got to be an issue with that.
That's
because
right. And even in a plane, when they
physics
load up
in
different
flight,
people in different parts of the plane.
it's a different thing to driving a car, folks.
So the downsides here, top speed of 40 k's an hour I mentioned. The flying range is about 110 kilometres. The driving range is not too bad, 320 kilometres, obviously all electric driving and flying. So that's not too bad. That's enough to get you to work, back to your commute, depending on where you're working. So that's not too bad. It's all quite safe in terms of the propellers are in or protected by a mesh system. You probably don't want it landing on you. That might be a bit dangerous. But apart from that, there's mesh protecting you. The CEO of this company compared the event, might have been pumping his weights up a little bit, compared the event to the Wright brothers' first flight.
Of course he did. Yeah.
So I thought that was a bit over the top, but the good part is I can park this in my garage. It's a normal-ish size car. Yeah. I can drive in my garage, I can drive out, and vertical takeoff I think is important as well.
Although it is a really long car.
It's a big car, but it just fits in the regulations for a car.
Okay.
But some of the other ones we've seen, you drive along, you have wings fold out, and you need a runway to take off, or you've got extendable arms that come out.
Yeah, it's more like a plane that you could put on the road.
Yeah, that's right. This is a car. Put in the air. But how cool would that be? I'm just taking off down to the supermarket, and literally you take off down to the supermarket. So we're getting there. Some way away yet, but we're getting there.
Watch this space, folks. You may not realise, but the colour of your roof is far more than an aesthetic. It may be contributing significantly to your cooling or heating bill, and it's probably contributing to the temperature of the atmosphere as well. So the question is, for modern home builders of the next quarter century, what is the most energy efficient colour to coat your roof with? And just how climate friendly is it, Matt?
Well, I had this interesting thought when people did talk about cooler roofs, as in light coloured or dark coloured roofs.
Yeah.
And so in relation to climate change, my first thought was, well, a light coloured roof that reflects more light is going to put more heat back into the atmosphere. So surely that's a bad thing. Surely we want dark coloured roofs everywhere because that absorbs the heat. Surely that would make sense. But it didn't seem to be the common thought process that people had.
Well, albedo is the term we use for the reflection of radiation back into the atmosphere. But it happens when we've got big ice caps as well. So anyway, I'll let you keep going.
Well, so the interesting part when I started doing some research on dark or light coloured roofs, the issue with dark coloured roofs is that it absorbs that heat, but then it keeps releasing that heat over time.
That's right.
So what is first best, in other words, a light coloured roof, is actually best, even though you might go, hold on, the dark might absorb the heat out of the atmosphere. So light coloured roofs are better. So that's step one. And there have been some places, discussion in Australia, overseas have been some places that have actually, or places that have actually gone and made regulations this way to say we want to have light coloured roofs everywhere because we want to be better for the environment. So great. Hasn't happened here yet, but it makes sense. They've then gotten to the point where they've got some super cool materials. So you've got synthetic polymers, you've got special paints that start to get reflectivity exceeding 95%. I mean, that's sounding pretty close to a mirror, isn't it? 95%. Yeah. And even in the US, they've got some ultra white paints, not just white, ultra white. and they've got a reflectivity of 98%.
So white roofs.
That's right.
Yeah,
now, really
okay.
white. No, not just white, ultra
Yeah,
white.
ultra white.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that seems a bit bizarre from where we're coming from regional Australia. But,
It does, doesn't it? So
yeah.
having these ultra white roofs, I imagine that as you're flying over those in a plane or
you
in
need
your
sunglasses.
car, you'd need sunglasses. You'd almost get, as I say, the reflection would be like a mirror. And that's great for the middle of summer. But when you get to winter, what you actually want is a roof that's dark, that absorbs that heat, because you don't want reflecting all that heat, because then you just increase your heating bill because you're not having your house warm up as much. So that's a bit of an issue. But some clever researchers at the University of New South Wales have come up with fluorescent films. And they've been doing some testing in Alice Springs for a start. So they want to make sure that these fluorescent films match the cooling performance of some of the white and reflectivity paints, if you like. And they've been getting pretty close to matching those. So the films they've got are called PCRCs, passive coloured radiative coolers, not a term that I've heard before. So they reflect the light, as you would expect, so they're great in summer. Then when it gets to winter, they still allow absorption. And when they did some testing, for example, in winter in Sydney, they found that they increased the temperature by 3.8 up to 5.5 degrees Celsius, depending whether you had orange or red configuration in that fluorescent colour. So
it looks like you've painted your roof here with a packet of fluoride textures or something. Is that right?
that's right. You've got the kids a project for summer. Get out there with those fluorescent pens and colour it in, and different colours. So it's not just a ultra white. It's, as I say, they make them in orange, they make them in green, make them in red. They're actually looking to expand the colour range to include purple, and even, get ready for it, even a black fluorescent. So you could still have your dark-ish coloured roof. It would reflect a lot of light in summer, but still absorb some of that in winter.
Right. So I'm just trying to think about it. I mean, we know that black lights have got the UV light that comes out, and we use them in discos and 10-pin bowling and stuff like that. So this is actually a black reflective paint.
Which doesn't make sense, does it? It seems completely counterintuitive. So quite incredible. Now, we're still some way away. They think that this will be maybe at the point where you might be able to buy these in 5 years' time. Might be able to go and buy this paint in 5 years' time. And imagine that, most roofs in Australia are either tile still, or metal roofs are typically a zinc aluminum. So you don't paint your roof as such. It's a zinc aluminum that's coated to last the life of your house. So you've got that coating there. But I imagine that surely there'd be at some point BHP would say that new colour bond roof we've got is using these new PCRCs. We want to make your house cooler in summer and warmer in winter. What a great advertising model.
So I'm just trying to get a visual image here. You're driving down into a valley, you're looking at all these rooftops on houses, and it looks like all these fluoro colours from a primary school art book.
Yeah, that's right. Someone gave the kids an art book and said, colour that in with your fluoro pens. Yeah, sounds like fun, doesn't it? At least it's not now when you fly over, especially in new suburbs, I find. When you fly over a new suburb, it just is dark. You get dark grey, dark black, dark brown. It's just dark, whatever they are. So it looks a bit boring, but imagine that whole fluorescent look of different colours. And again, it is. It's the oranges, it's the reds, it's the greens. It's
amazing.
All sorts of things. So quite fantastic. And I just think that combination, it's the holy grail, isn't it? Being able to make it cooler in summer and warmer in winter. That's what you're always trying to achieve in everything you do. Insulation you put in your house, you're trying to achieve exactly that. So that's what they're trying to do with rooftops. And we've got that big surface area as well to use there. So keep an eye out for those.
An amazing world. As the money machine that drives professional level sport tightens its grasp, the cost of a poor decision from an umpire or a referee becomes more and more expensive, more inexcusable. So there's little wonder that with more and more, the human element is being removed from making game-changing calls. Matt, what's happening now in Major League Baseball?
Well, before we get to baseball, I want to talk about cricket because I do love my cricket.
Yeah, everyone loves their cricket.
Shane Warne appears on a bunch of different lists for his feats as a cricketer. Shane Warne's no longer with us, but he was a legendary leg spin bowler. Now, most of the lists he appears on are because of his wonderful feats as a bowler, but there's one list that he's on, and that is he tops the list of all Test players in terms of the number of runs they've scored, the list of run scorers that haven't scored a century. He's number one on that list. So
Hang on a second.
He scored more runs than anyone else playing Test cricket.
Oh, without scoring a century.
Without scoring a century. Now, he's on that list, but he shouldn't be, because famously on 99, playing against, I think it was New Zealand. He's played a bit of a hoik shot. He's a bit excited. He's on 99. I'm about to score my first ever Test century. He's done a bit of a hoik shot, and he got caught out near the boundary. Out for 99. How terrible. In fact, I remember the commentary at the time, because I thought it was a bit over the top. The commentator said, what a tragic incident. Now, tragic incident getting out is probably not what I would define as tragedy. Maybe someone dying, someone being very sick is a tragedy, but getting out for 99 is pretty frustrating, pretty annoying, but maybe not a tragic incident. But later on, replays showed that the ball that was bowled was a no ball.
Oh.
Now,
he was robbed.
He was robbed, absolutely right. So he should have scored a century. And of course, back in those days, I'm not talking about that long ago, but you relied on the umpire. Now, the umpire has a lot to do. The umpire is standing there at the crease, watching the bowler come in, keeping an eye on the front foot of the bowler and the side of the crease as well to make sure he's delivering that bowling fairly, keeping an eye on the arm of the bowler to make sure the arm isn't bent while delivering the ball, and then still looking up fast enough to be able to see the ball being delivered at up to 160 kilometres an hour, judging LBW, judging a cat caught behind, whatever it might be. So there's a lot for an umpire to do. Now, thankfully, today, they've taken away the no ball call. Don't worry about looking down at the no ball. We've got technology now that will pick up every time. So sometimes you'll see the ball delivered, the shots occur, that's over, and then the umpire says, oh, no ball, because I've just been told by the off-field umpire that was a no ball. So great advance in technology. And Shane Warne, if you're still with us, I'm sure would say, if only that technology was around, that shot, because he would have easily scored a single where the shot went. So it would have been that. Now, we've seen in lots of different sports where technology, because I used to find it frustrating as a kid. I'm a Manly Rugby League supporter, and you'd see, Manly was always robbed, of course, but you'd see a try that was denied of Manly, and then on TV we'd see the replay and it was obvious it should have been a try, or the other way around, the opposition would score a try that wasn't a try. We all knew that, but the referee having to make a decision on the ground from wherever he's standing at the time in a split second, you can't expect them to get it right all the time. And it was always disappointing that they'd be up the referee at the end. Oh, the referee cost us the match. Well, it's a bit unfair. Lots of other decisions that
I
you made.
actually love the human element of sport. So, and I was always taught from the young age that you play the whistle, that you respect the decision. And we, at amateur sport level, you don't have the benefits of modern technology and whatnot, but you've just got to play the whistle. And sometimes it goes your way and sometimes it doesn't. And I like that element, but I know that now there's so much money in professional sport that that you can't have that anymore. And you just can't have it.
I absolutely know where you're coming from. And again, at sort of junior cricket, junior footy level, whatever, it was always, play the whistle and do whatever the umpire says.
And sometimes you knew the umpire was wrong.
That's right. And you just had to accept it.
You just
and
wore
walk
it.
Off. Yeah, that's right. By that status, I was never out in cricket. So
you never got out once?
Even when the stumps were shattered, it was obviously a no ball that wasn't picked up by the umpire. So we know, and again, as you say, professional sport careers can be ended on a bad decision by an umpire.
But there are hundreds of thousands of dollars that are being bet on these games.
Yeah, true.
And people's, as you say, careers, and they get a little bit more extra money for a bonus for winning. There's a lot at stake now. It is. And money has such an important factor.
It did seem strange when you'd see these replays when I was a kid and you knew the decision was wrong, but nothing you could do about it now. The whole result hinged on that one decision and the whole thing was wrong. But they've obviously changed that. So tennis, is that Hawkeye? That was 2001 Hawkeye was introduced. So that's obviously good because I've sat at tennis matches and they're serving at that sort of speed, 160, 200 kilometres an hour. If you're trying to watch a ball of that and see, did a part of that ball touch the line? And I love the French Open when they go over on the clay court and they point to where a ball... Was that ball definitely that landed on that spot? Right, so on hard courts,
for an umpire, if you just had a bit of a troubled night's sleep the night before and a little bit any distraction at all,
that's right. So difficult. So Hawkeye's been around in tennis for a while, where it tracks the ball's trajectory, and that's always fun when you go to a tennis match and you're waiting for the crowd to build up as the ball's coming down on the screen when you're watching the replay. And it's like, depending on whether you like the player or not. Rugby League, I mentioned they've got the bunker system now, which is much better. NFL, they've got a bunch of technology, instant replay systems. They've got Hawkeye as well. But Major League Baseball, MLB, they haven't used technology. And one of the areas where there's been a lot of discussion has been whether or not that's a fair pitch. So you've got the...
is it in the box?
In the box, that's right. And interestingly enough, they've done a bunch of research on umpires who are professional umpires. They're paid money to stand there and watch and make a decision on whether that ball is in the box or not. but the box is really an oval. When they've actually looked at when they've called it a fair or a not fair delivery, it's more like an oval rather than a perfect rectangle like it should be. So they've been doing some testing in the minor leagues where they've had robo-umpires. So the robo-umpires are set up and it's adjusted depending on the height of the player. So when someone walks out to bat, they look at their height or they feed their height into the robo-umpire, and then that adjusts the fair zone, and then automatically it can just call whether it's a fair pitch or not. So fantastic, and to me, it's one of those areas that it's pretty black and white, and it should be easy to do instantly to just judge whether that ball's in there. Now, the first problem they had was with some of the breaking balls, so we would call swing in cricket, breaking balls in baseball, because they're trying to track this ball, and the system, the vision system, the Hawkeye system is looking at that going, okay, yep, it's coming along there, I can track it, but it's tracking it really assuming that it's going in a straight line from A to B.
If it's got any lateral movement at all, that's complicated.
But again, same with swing bowling, you can get a fair bit of movement in some of the pitchers that are very clever at what they do with the amount of spin they put on the ball. So essentially, they had to work out that. They've got that now. And at this stage, they've been trialling in minor leagues where it's a challenge system, a bit like you see in other sports where you can challenge the decision. But eventually the plan is to get to the stage where automatically, if it's a fair pitch or not a fair pitch, then it comes up automatically to say exactly what it is. So it won't even be an umpire making the initial decision and then challenge. So it's not happening this season. But next season, they think they'll get to the point where they'll have robo-umpires helping the on-field umpires.
Wow.
And then
helping them.
Yeah, so in other words, there'll be that ability to challenge, but eventually it won't be too far away where it will just be an automatic. It might be a light system, it might be on screen, whatever it might be. Just bang, the light comes on, whatever that pitch was.
See, I've already talked about how I feel about umpires and how important I think they are in it for them to make the call. But in baseball, there's theatre as well, right? So the umpire, and some of those umpires know they're part of the theatre.
They do.
Yeah. So I only want to know about this is if there's a robot there that also knows how to do all those motions and get the drama really sort of
You want a robot umpire that really starts in their face.
You're out of there! Right. You know. And then the coach can go and kick the dirt on the shoes and all that sort of stuff and spit his chewing gum at it. And
well, they have made a few changes. They actually limited, I don't watch much baseball, but they've limited the number of mound visits. And I've watched some baseball in America when I've been there, and I found it a bit like cricket in terms of everyone's so focused on the stats. It's very similar in that way. But I used to find it a bit confusing when suddenly there'd be the manager who'd run out to the mound and have a discussion. And I said to someone beside one time, I said, "What are they doing this for?" He said, "Oh, mate, I've been watching baseball all my life. I've got no idea." Yeah. So I think that's part of the theatre as well. But they've reduced the number of pitch mound visits that the manager can make, again, to try and speed up the game a little bit. Okay. And they've got a pitch clock now, so there's a certain amount of time you've got to pitch. So again, all that theatre when the pitchers looking around at the different bases, someone can try and steal a base or whatever. So they've kind of tried to speed it up, probably more for TV than anything else. Yeah. But maybe the robo-umpire would be the next thing. But I really think no matter what sport it is you follow, there's going to be some technology in there to help decisions become the right decisions.
That's right.
Baseball's held out for a long time, but with something as clear-cut as that fair pitch, as that rectangle, the magic box, is something as clear-cut as that, surely that's an obvious one to me.
For sure.
Yeah.
Now, for the longest time, I always imagined that the Eastern Asian countries were the home of everything that is in the latest in the tech world. News to me was the announcement that South Korea will finally get the Find My feature, that's the Find My feature, from Apple now. Matt, what's the story behind South Korea's obsession with lost property, and why is it coming to an end just now?
Well, I didn't actually realise that South Korea didn't have the Find My feature.
Well, neither did I. I just assumed that they would.
That's right. I assume everywhere.
They must have so much lost property.
They must have. But I discovered it last year when I went to South Korea, and I have an AirTag in my bag, in my luggage, and I'd just like to get to the airport and go, do I need to worry about hanging around at the carousel, or do I just go back to the motel and wait for my luggage to turn up? And I went to find on my phone my AirTag when I landed in South Korea, and I went, I can't see it.
Disappeared.
Where is it? And then realised that the Find My feature is disabled in South Korea. And I went, I just assume that was a government decision.
Across the whole world, I'd have assumed that everyone just had
Everyone. I mean, I think there'll probably be some places that don't like you tracking where things are. Maybe there's some countries I won't mention. Well, yeah, I wasn't going to mention anywhere, but okay, you've done it now. So in South Korea, the government didn't say you can't have the Find My feature turned on to Apple. But South Korea has incredibly strict privacy laws, and they're very worried about national security, maybe because of another country you might have mentioned just nearby somewhere there. That might have something to do with it. So I think Apple, maybe there was some behind the scenes, behind closed doors talks, but Apple had said, we're not turning on Find My in South Korea. And that kind of got accepted for a while, but eventually users in South Korea said, please, Apple, can you turn it on? They petitioned Apple. They mounted a whole movement in South Korea to say, turn on my Find My feature.
Amazing that it was so crucial to people.
Well, I think people either travelled around other parts of the world or just saw people talking about it. And one of the great things I find now with modern phones is the fact that they're very rarely stolen because it's useless to you. You've got it signed in with your details. You can track where it is. What's the point of stealing a phone? You're going to just throw it out in 10 minutes' time with frustration after you tried to get into it or tried to get away from someone that might be chasing you because they know where you are. I did wonder whether it was anything to do with the fact that Samsung is based out of South Korea, and I thought maybe there's something there where Samsung kind of didn't like their main competitor having Find My turn on, but I couldn't really come up with any good theory
So we've
around
got
that.
no real reason why they haven't had it, but the news is that they have it now.
They have it now, almost for everyone, because the only way you can get it today, as we speak, is to download the beta version of the latest iOS. And to get on the beta program is pretty easy. I'm on the beta program for Apple. You just go in and sign up to it and say, I want to be on the beta program. You accept it. Sometimes you'll get a new iOS that isn't perfect and there's some glitches in there. But in terms of this one, the only way you can get the Find My feature right now is with the beta version, because presumably they don't want everyone in South Korea having it at once, because maybe they'll want to test out a little bit first. But the logic is once they've tested on some beta program or some beta users, it'll be released to everyone. So you'll have Find My, you'll have AirTags, you'll have all the normal features that everyone else around the world's got, being able to track where someone else is if they give you permission for it, all sorts of things like that. So it does give you an idea, though, doesn't it, how much people use that. And what I find fascinating, I've got my kids and my wife are all in our little Find My group, but I was talking to one of my kids one day and they said, we're meeting up with so-and-so, one of their friends, I'll just see where they're at. And they had a look where they are. I said, how do you know where they're at? My friend, they've shared their location. I went, really? You've just got friends randomly share? So I looked on her phone and there would have been 20 different people that had shared their location with my daughter. And I've gone, wow. I don't know that I'd want to just share my location with friends of mine.
Do you want to be tracked by everyone all the time?
That's right. And my kids do say that sometimes. They'll go, I went to ring you the other day, but I realised you were at this particular event and I waited till that was finished before I rang you. I went, you stalker. So, I mean, I don't have an issue with my wife or kids knowing where I am, but when you start to share that location with your friends, that's a fair bit of trust involved. So people are using it more and more. I mean, I might use it on a one-off. If I'm meeting up with someone and I'm on my way there and I know it's a half-hour car trip to get there, I might send my location and ETA to them, but it's a one-off. It's not forevermore. You can see where I am every second, literally every second of the day. So it's popular, obviously, and for younger kids.
Maybe this becomes a status thing. If you don't share your location with me always, then we can't be friends.
That's right. Are you really my friend? If I can't know where you are you really my friend? So I remember reading a story now. It might be a myth, but I remember reading a story when back in the old days, you had your phone bill that came in and it had an amount you had to pay.
Yep.
Maybe you had how many phone calls were made, but that was about as much detail as you got. And I remember living in a share house back when I was at uni, and the phone bill would come in and we'd just divide it by 4 and say, there you go, it's spread evenly. But then one of my flatmates one time said, well, hold on, 2 of you live out of town, so STD calls all the time. The other 2 aren't STD calls, but we overcame that and just said, just go 4 ways, it's okay.
We used to divide our phone bill up and work out who'd rung where.
Oh, no.
Yes.
So the funny part about that was that you'd have a pad sometimes. I went into households like that and there'd be everyone writing down all their phone bills, and you guarantee the total amount of the phone bill was about 50% more than what was written down because you can't remember every phone call. But apparently, again, could be an urban myth, but apparently the incidences of extramarital affairs went down dramatically when itemised phone bills came out. So once the bills came out and all of a sudden it was every phone number that was rung on that phone, it was hold on, what's this number? And then someone would actually ring that number. G'day, who have I got here? Oh, Mary. Oh, really? Mary? Why would we have made a phone call from you? Whoops. Oh, this isn't Mary anymore. So either people started getting the phone boxes, I'm not sure, or maybe getting a burner phone if you had a mobile phone. But yeah, apparently that had a bit of an issue there. So I wonder with Find My, when partners say to each other, can I track where you are? And if the answer is no, maybe that's a red flag as well.
We had a conversation about this ages ago, and I just think asking the question, do you mind if I track you?
That's right.
See,
how do you ask that question?
Yeah. You know, who becomes the bad guy then?
Yeah, that's right. If the answer is no,
there's
why
no
is
answer
it no?
to it. Yes, yes, please track me, or no, you can't track me.
That's right. Why?
Either way, the relationship's going downhill.
It's for your safety that I want to track where you are at every minute of the day.
Oh, dear.
So anyway,
Can of worms.
Good news for South Koreans. I'm not sure if it's going to help extramarital affairs. I'm sure South Koreans are very honest, don't do any of that. But it's certainly a change. And I need to research actually what other countries, I'm sure there's a few others around the world, one that you might have mentioned, that don't have the Find My feature turned on. I should research that one. Anyway, it's on for South Koreans. Happy days. So I can go back there now, happy in the knowledge I can find my bag.
Fantastic. He may have the whole world in his hands, but it's never enough for a multi-billionaire. So Mark Zuckerberg and the minions at Meta are looking to string our planet up entirely with a new record-breaking length of undersea internet cable. Matt, fibre optics have already virtually shrunk the planet. What do Meta want to achieve out of this?
Just more domination.
More internet.
At the moment, we've grown actually. Our subsea data cables, have grown from 20 back in 2017. How do we survive with only 20? To 60.
Sorry, did you say 20 undersea cables?
Yeah.
Full stop.
Full stop. Now, remember, some of these might be a long undersea cable that goes multiple countries, like it might be classified as one.
Gotcha.
But 20 cables, and they've got a lot of data.
Because I was looking at a map only a week ago of this sort of stuff, and it just looked like a mess.
Well, it does now because we're up to 60 as of last year.
There you go.
Yeah, so it's grown in that time, and these aren't simple little things to put in. It's not like, I'll run a little cable over your place, James, and we'll have a bit of communication going. These are pretty major undertakings.
For sure.
Meta has decided that they need another one. They've got some already. This is a 50,000 kilometre subsea internet cable. Now, I looked up the diameter of the Earth, circumference, not diameter, sorry, circumference of the Earth, depending where you take it.
40,000 or something.
Yeah, 40,000 give or take. So you go, hold on, 50,000. So what, you're going around more than once?
Well, he needs a little bit at the ends to tie it into a bow.
Maybe that's it. So obviously it kind of meanders. It doesn't just go straight around the Earth once. It's obviously got to go to different countries. And this one starts in the US, Brazil, South Africa, India. So basically looping along, waving up and down amongst these various countries. But this is getting serious now. Most undersea data cables in the past have had about 8 in the early days fibre pairs, moving up to 16 fibre pairs. Now we're up to 24 fibre pairs. So this is a 50,000 kilometre cable, 24 fibre pairs, cost maybe 10 billion. We haven't got an exact figure out of Meta, but maybe in the vicinity of $10 billion.
That's lunch money.
Lunch money, that's right. So it's a lot of money, but it's all about who owns the internet. Now, I would kind of hope, a bit like happening in Australia, the decision was made by the government, let's go and build out the NBN, the National Broadband Network, and then we'll let retailers sell their services on something that the government, that you and I own. And I don't mind that idea. Something like a natural monopoly like the internet, I don't mind being in government hands, and sure, let the retailers do the things they do better at the end of the line, but the infrastructure, let the government own it.
Yeah.
The problem we have now is that more than half of our undersea bandwidth is owned by the big 4 tech companies, Google, Facebook, or Meta to be accurate, and Alphabet to be accurate with Google. So what people would commonly know, Google, Facebook, Amazon, and Microsoft. Those 4 own more than half of the undersea bandwidth. Now, you can imagine if you're a company that relies on the internet to make your money, like Facebook, for example, advertising, then you want to make sure the internet is working and reliable. And one way to do that is to say, well, I'm just going to own all the infrastructure. Now, it's not all the infrastructure, but it's a fair chunk of it when you start owning the undersea cables.
Yeah.
Now, these cables are, I find, quite incredible. I've watched some documentaries on these being laid, and you've got a ship with a massive roll of cable that's rolling out because you're going a fair distance from A to B, and you don't have a nice, easy little joiner that you just stick in there because you're underwater. Some places, this cable is 7,000 metres deep. Now, they talk about using various techniques to bury this, enhanced burial techniques to protect it.
Well, you need boosters as well, I understand, too.
I'm going to get to that.
Sorry, spoiler alert.
No, but that's another interesting part. But 7,000 metres deep, surely there is no device they've got that's going 7 kilometres down to bury that. Surely they're just dropping it and saying it'll land somewhere.
Yeah, it's going to land
we assume it's okay.
On some sperm whale somewhere. And
that's possible too. That's right.
It's going to get annoyed.
When it's a bit shallower, because they talk about they want to protect it from various things, including anchors. So in water that's shallow, you're not dropping a 7,000 metre anchor, obviously. Imagine the ship holding a 7 kilometre length of...
But this is an issue still. We talked about this, is that ships dropping these enormous chains as anchors and drag them across these things.
Correct. That's a part of the problem. So you've got to bury them in shallower water to protect them. And then we've also seen some incidents where we've had sabotage. We know the Baltic Sea had some sabotage in their undersea cables. So you've got those issues. And then there are some people who are worried about the environment. So, for example, they talk about maybe the electromagnetic fields from these cables affecting undersea marine life. And I thought to myself, fibre, one of the great things about fibre is you don't have an electromagnetic field because it's light that it's using. It's not like
it's electromagnetism, but it's got an insulating
it's
coating.
got that, but the amount of electromagnetism coming out of fibre is negligible.
Well, there may be magnetic fields that are associated with it, but that would not affect anything that's down there. And remember that the water itself, it also
absorbs that very quickly. So, I mean, one of the things when you're talking about when you're running just a normal office situation, if you're running that in Ethernet, you don't want to run it for more than typically about a metre beside some AC cabling because the electromagnetic field from your Ethernet cable will be impacted by that electromagnetic field from your electricity. But with fibre, you don't have to worry about that so much because the electromagnetic field from the electricity doesn't really impact the light in the fibre cable.
Right.
But, so I thought, well, that's a strange statement to make that this electromagnetic field is going to affect undersea marine life.
That's bogus, I reckon.
But it is bogus until I did some more research on that.
Oh, right.
And what you've got to do is you've got to have some type of boosting technology about every 100 kilometres, roughly.
Okay.
And so how do you power that? Well, in your big mother undersea cable that's got your 24 fibre pairs, you've also got some electricity that's powering these boosters that are installed in the cable about every 100 metres or so, 100 kilometres, not 100 metres, so about every 100 kilometres or so. You'll get some electromagnetic interference coming from the electricity that's running in this cable. So you can start to see why you spend $10 billion because you're running now power going from continent to continent. Again, you don't have a little power point you can plug in halfway across the ocean. All the power, not yet, yeah, maybe right. All the power that's being provided for those boosters every 100 kilometres is in the cable itself. So I've seen some of those cables when they roll them out on the back of those ships, and they're huge cables, and you think, well, fibre optic's not very big. Even 24 fibre pairs, that's not very big, and the cables are huge, but you've got to have a bunch of insulation, you've got to have power, you've got to have these boosters installed in the cable as you roll them out. So they're pretty complicated little beasts that they're rolling out across there. There are. So Google has already spent, the biggest project they did was a $1 billion project, so nothing compared to this one, just getting bigger and bigger. US and India have said this is fantastic, that it will strengthen the relationship with US and India, have better global connectivity across there. So overall, I just think it's a quite an incredible process that we're seeing, and
what a world we live in.
Again, you're right, but if the 60 by last year, I just wonder how many we'll have in the next 5 years, and when at some stage government starts saying we need to have some relationships between countries to say let's roll out another cable that's government owned, because that's the other problem. If I'm a Facebook, I don't worry about countries. I'm a global player.
Yeah.
But if I'm America, I don't want to pay for a cable that goes across and hooks up across to some other country. I don't want to hook up the UK to America because we'll let the UK pay for it. Well, no, you pay for it. You're America. You're bigger than us. So that's where you might have governments need to have some good discussions and some good relationships to basically roll some of those out. But yeah, quite incredible.
I'll say that again. The competition to dominate in the mobile phone market is as hot as ever. Players must innovate or fade to obscurity, and previous popularity is no guarantee of future popularity. So, Matt, what is the new strategy for the iPhone 16?
I don't love talking about individual releases like this that much on our podcast because everyone else covers it. There's a new phone that comes out, everyone else covers it. I don't think we need to. We're looking more at the future.
If you're into iPhone whatever, then you can go into the Apple
well, there's a bunch of people out there who do videos, unboxing, all that sort of stuff. And I've done some stuff like that, some unboxing stuff. It's good fun, but I prefer to talk about what's coming next. And the reason I want to talk about the 16E is because it's not so much about the 16E. It's about the strategy from Apple. Because Apple's owned the high-end market. People buy iPhones, sometimes as a status symbol, sometimes when they send their text message, they want it to be the right colour. Otherwise, they don't want to be friends with you because you haven't got the right colour and you're not going to share your location with Find My iPhone because you haven't got an iPhone. So having Apple then say, we're going to introduce a budget phone is quite an interesting strategy from Apple. So they've got their 16. They've got their 16, 16 Plus, 16 Pro. So they've got their 4 flagship models. And then the 16E is basically take out a few of those features and make it a bit cheaper. So to give you an idea, the cheapest iPhone 16 you can buy is $1,399. That's the lowest memory, the lowest spec iPhone 16. That's in Australian dollars. They've introduced the iPhone 16E. Does the E stand for economy? Not sure if they've actually said what the E stands for, but
that makes sense to me.
Let's go with economy. It's $1,000, so it's $400 cheaper. And what are you missing out on that $400? And is it worth just paying the extra $400 if you're going to pay $1,000? You might as well pay $1,400. So the main things you miss out on are extra camera in the back. So people just get used to seeing a phone now with multiple cameras on the back. The 16 has 2. The 16 Pros have 3. The 16E has 1 on the back. So that's a bit of a drop. And the other thing I'm intrigued by is they've taken out MagSafe. Now, we've talked before about MagSafe, getting higher charging rates by making sure your QI2, your Qi 2 charging is done at the right speed. Is part of MagSafe's job is to get it locked into exactly the right location. So they've taken out MagSafe. And again, I think they were probably thinking about what do we remove from this? It's the same size, shape, basically the same physical dimensions as the 16. We've got to take some things out. Otherwise, why would anyone buy the 16? So MagSafe and extra cameras, what they've taken out. The other thing that's intriguing is they've still got the SE, and the SEs are still being sold. The SEs are $600, and they're the same shape as the iPhone 8. So they look the same. You look at it, and it's hard to tell. There's a couple of little subtle differences. An 8 to a SE, and there's an SE first generation, second generation, up to third generation now, but physically still looks the same. And my theory initially when they brought out the SE was there was a factory somewhere that was pumping out a bunch of iPhone 8s, and then when they moved to a new shape with the new iPhones that came out, they've gone, what do we do with this factory? Oh, let's call it Special Edition, and then we'll keep rolling out of the same factory because we've got all the tooling set up to be able to roll this out.
Yeah, of course.
But here we are now. It's been a long time since the iPhone 8 came out.
A long time.
And we're up to the iPhone SE third generation. So I thought that was their budget phone at $600. If you want to be part of the iPhone ecosystem, part of the Find My, part of all the things that happen with iPhones, then the SE does it for you. But it's an obvious drop in class, whereas if you can get the 16 that looks the same, maybe it's not so obvious until you try to take a photo and there's only one camera on the back. But for many people, maybe that wouldn't be that obvious. So it's the same shape and size as a 16, just with a few cut down features. So it's an interesting strategy from iPhone or from Apple. But I think the reason they're doing this is because Android, sure, you've got Samsung based in South Korea. You've got Samsung with their flagship S25 is their current range now. So you've got their expensive phones to compete at the higher end with Apple. But then you've also got a bunch of Android phones that are hundreds of dollars.
Yeah.
So you can sometimes get people in at the ground level and then they want to progress up and they eventually get to the flagship model because they're used to the whole Android.
But there is definitely
ecosystem.
a market there for people who just say, I just want to be able to text and make phone calls and maybe a couple of other little take photos. Perhaps, well, I don't think you can get a phone without a camera in it these days.
No, you couldn't.
But just want simple. They want to back it off.
Yeah.
So there's definitely a market for that. People sort of downsizing.
Well, there is that, but I think the other thing that I see sometimes is that you talk to some elderly people who just want a phone to be able to make phone calls. Keep in touch
they
with
get
you.
more confusing and more confusing. So
They do,
understandably.
but sometimes their grandkids want them to have an iPhone so they can FaceTime, for example,
Yeah.
or they want them an iPhone because they're familiar with it. So when grandma or grandpa rings and says, how do I do something, they know how to use it.
Yep.
So they're probably encouraging some of their grandparents, some of the older generation to have an iPhone. But again, do you really need a $2,500 iPhone with huge amounts of memory and a bunch of cameras and pro raw photography? Or do you just want a phone that's fairly simple to use and maybe a big screen's not such a bad idea as well?
Yeah.
So it's an interesting strategy. far be it for me to question the strategy of a $3 trillion company, but if they want to get into that budget market, maybe they need to come up with an actual budget iPhone rather than a budget iPhone that's $1,000. That still seems like a lot of money to pay for a phone.
Yeah. Now, DNA is essentially just biological data storage. Unlocking the code in 1953 opened the floodgates to possibilities in genetics. But the mere act of decoding DNA is a really energy-intensive one, to say the very least. What took years once now takes days, though. That was until now, when AI entered the scene and brought that decoding time down to minutes. Matt, what are the ins and outs of decoding DNA with AI?
Well, it gets even better than that. I didn't realise that we were using DNA for data storage.
Yeah. So I was getting confused by this because I was thinking, so it's got my data all stored in my DNA, my biological data. But no, we were actually storing like other data
as a storage medium. So rather than put it on a compact disc or maybe putting it on a hard drive, they're storing data. So photos, videos in DNA. So
and you can pack it so tightly that you've got all the instructions to make me, James Eddy,
that's right,
in a cell.
That's right. So you've got it's very good at data storage. So that's the thing. So what they do with DNA data storage is they take normal binary code, so whether it be photos, videos, text, whatever normal data you would have, and you've got your ones and zeros of that, and then they translate that into the 4 DNA bases, A, T, C, and G, and then they use algorithms to basically chemically synthesize that and store all of that in a physical medium.
Yeah.
And again, my mind blows sometimes when you think, who thought of that? Who said, you know what, DNA's got a bunch of information about James Eddy, but we could put some videos of cute cats and dogs on there as well. And someone said, why would we do that? And then as they started to research that, they got to the stage where you can store 215 petabytes per gram of DNA. So you go, that's not too bad. But is it any good for the long term? Well, DNA remains intact for thousands of years. Make sure you've got stable conditions. You don't want to have certain conditions that mightn't work that well. But also you don't need constant power. Now, you don't need constant power for other storage mediums like, say, a compact disc as well. So, but it still has that attraction. You don't need power to have that storage. So you go, well, that's fantastic, but it gets complicated. So doing all of that is pretty complicated and expensive until now, when they've now got AI and they're using AI to do some, if you like, better algorithms, and they can decode that digital data that's stored in maybe minutes when it used to take days. So the whole thing, the decoding DNA is difficult. So we have taken a long time to do it. And even then when you say, here's my DNA, can you decode it and tell me some more information about James Eddy? Sure, that's not a quick thing to do. But with AI looking at this DNA data storage, maybe we'll go and buy at our local electronics retailer not a hard drive, not a thumb drive, but a device that stores data in DNA.
A little vial of cellular fluid.
I don't know how to be packaged. It's crazy. So, but there will be a time, I guarantee, in our lifetimes, we'll make the choice. Do we want to store it in a hard drive? Do we want to store it on a thumb drive? I know, we'll get that little device there, and that's got petabytes of data storage in DNA, and it'll be some cool algorithm that AI uses to unpack all of that. So it is crazy, isn't it? But we see things in nature and we go, that's pretty clever. Let's just go and steal those concepts and use that in the real world.
And it only takes one person or a small group of people to go, I've just had this idea. Let's store data on DNA.
And all those people out there, a bit of a plug for science here, all those people out there that go, what a waste of money it is to actually spend money on research projects or give PhD students money to be able to go and do their PhD. This is the sort of thing you get out of it.
Well, this is
when
right.
you throw money at science research, you get these wonderful things that, again, I don't know, 10 years' time, let's pick a number, 10 years' time, you'll go and buy your USB DNA data storage, which will have an incredible amount of storage for a little tiny bit of space, and you go, gee, I'm glad we gave that money to those researchers all those years ago. So
exactly.
Quite fascinating.
Now, how are you all going with your streaming services these days? We all seem to be running a fair sort of a roll call of subscription these days. Netflix, Disney+, Stan, Amazon Prime, Binge and Paramount. Well, there's 6 just to start with, and I'm not even trying. you could be paying at least $150 a month easily, and there'll still be something juicy to watch somewhere else that you don't have access to yet. So, Matt, how is there space in the streaming marketplace for a new boy like Tubi?
Well, I had to subscribe to Amazon Prime recently because they've got the rights to all ICC matches, all International Cricket Council matches.
And there you go.
And so
You're hooked in.
I had to. I had no choice. I wanted to watch the cricket. And I thought, surely I can watch the cricket on my normal pay TV service. It's got all other cricket, but there's a Champions
Now you've got no
Trophy
money
on.
to spend at lunchtime.
That's right. That's it. I'm done now. So along comes Tubi, which kind of sounds like a bit of a throwback to the past. So it's from Fox Corporation, and they've said, you know what? We've got this idea. We reckon we can have a free streaming service. So that sounds pretty attractive straight away, and we'll pay for it by ads. So you'll watch a TV show and there'll be ads that'll come up at various times. And that's right. And you go, gee, this sounds like free-to-air TV. I remember complaining about free-to-air TV when I was a kid. We used to have two channels.
Yeah.
We had CBN8/CWN6 or ABC. And I said to Dad one time, I said, I prefer to watch the ABC because that other thing's got ads on it, but they've got some good shows on there. He said, son, those ads are what pays for you to watch the programs. And I didn't quite get it. I was 2 years old at the time. Didn't quite understand the concept, but worked out later on that, yes, that's how they actually pay for free-to-air TV. So fantastic, but Tubi's proven to be pretty popular.
We've gone full circle.
We have gone full circle. 97 million monthly active users on Tubi. You don't need a subscription. I went and tried it out. I thought surely there'll be some way you have to register, but I went and tried it out. Went and logged on. There's Tubi. I watched a bit of a Mr. Bean cartoon. Actually, I didn't know Mr. Bean had cartoons. I remember Mr. Bean in real life, but I watched a Mr. Bean cartoon. I mean, that's pretty cool. They've got this concept, and I think this is more the concept that I saw for streaming services initially. They've got 275,000 movies, TV episodes, a bunch more than places like Netflix. And one of the things that I found interesting with Apple and Netflix, for example, is they've gone full steam ahead with exclusive content. So they're making movies, they're making series, they're making productions that are exclusive to their production. And when I first imagined, when Netflix first came out, I first imagined, oh, great, there's somewhere that's got every show that's ever been that I can just go and watch Knight Rider or go and watch some show from the past that I think that's a great show. I just want to catch up on that. Of course, now we know you've got to have 28 different streaming services, you said, to catch all those old classics.
Yes.
But it seems to be that the way they're getting subscribers is through that exclusive content. You can only watch this on Apple TV because we produced it. No one else is going to have access to this. Whereas Tubi has said, you know what, we're not going to produce anything. We're going to provide a low-cost, $0 service. We're going to have it low cost for us to produce because we're going to a bunch of old movie producers, old movie places, if you like, TV places, and saying, we're going to pay you a very small amount of money to give people access to these, and so we'll make our money out of the ads that we sell on there, so it's got to be a low-cost model. And it seems to be that they're all over it. Although, having said that, they did simulcast the Super Bowl. And I thought, you don't get that for free, but Fox Corporation, Fox Sports, happen to have the contract for the Super Bowl, so they probably got that without spending too much money because they're probably only doing themselves out of viewership. But that's a great way to get people hooked in, isn't it? Yeah. Oh, I don't have to subscribe to Fox Sports. I can go and get this free Tubi. I'll watch the Super Bowl. Oh, what's this Tubi? I might watch a few more shows on this.
So this is the thing, you know, advertisers are only going to spend money on you if they think people are going to be watching you.
Yeah.
And so Tubi is sort of caught in this catch-22. They need to get the advertisers in so they can put on their shows, but they also need to make sure they've got the people watching it. And so, you know, being able to snaffle something like the Super Bowl. Yeah,
that's right. So I think a bit of exclusive content doesn't hurt. In Mexico, apparently it's huge because the CONCACAF Champions Cup is exclusive. Now, I'm not that familiar with the CONCACAF Champions Cup.
Right, okay. Yeah,
it's what I would call a soccer tournament.
Okay.
Most people around the world call it football, but I would call it soccer. So it's big in Mexico, and because they're exclusively showing that, then people are going to subscribe to that. So you're right. I think you need to get a bit of a mix. You need to say, we've got some exclusive content that draws you in.
Yeah.
Once we've got you, now look at this, 275,000 different shows. Yeah. That's going to take me more than a couple of days to actually watch, I reckon. That's going to keep me going for a while.
I'm going home to check it out as soon as this is over.
Well, go and discover stuff that maybe you didn't even realise was out there. So it's interesting. But the
the ads
world,
give you a chance to duck off to the toilet, go make yourself a cup of tea or whatever, and then come back. That's what we used to do in the olden days.
It is.
Yeah.
You wait till an ad.
Ads aren't so bad.
You've still got that advantage, though. You can stop it. Whereas before, you have to duck out in the ad. And hold on, I'm not ready. It's back on. Quick, get back. So,
Yeah, there'd be someone sitting on the edge going, come on, it's back on, it's back on.
That's right.
Okay, folks, we're going to finish off today going deep nerd. We're talking quantum computing chips, so nerd up or be on your way. Matt, Microsoft has unveiled their Majorana chip with topological superconductivity, and it sure has tongues wagging around the mainframe server, doesn't it?
It does indeed. And I don't do a lot of stuff on quantum because I still think quantum...
It's in its early days.
Early days.
Yeah,
and I just think there are so many major announcements, but I thought this one was fascinating. What I loved when I read some stuff about Einstein was that he was a theoretical physicist, and he came up with concepts. He obviously didn't just go, I think this is how it is. He'd obviously do his research, come up with his processes, come up with a bit of a hypothesis and try and get to that stage.
A lot of thought experiments there, but the thought experiments were valid.
They were valid, but then what I love about that is sometimes many decades later, someone says, we've just done an experiment that actually showed that Einstein was spot on
the track.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think Einstein probably laughed at the other physicists that actually had to do the work. No, I just didn't think about these things. You've got to go and put it together and make it happen.
Yeah.
I can do my stuff
ideas.
much quicker. Yeah. In 1937, Ettore Majorana theorised Majorana particles as a different state of matter. And now Microsoft is saying, you know what? We've got this previously theoretical state of matter that we've now got that's real.
Sorry, this is blowing my mind. So a new state of matter.
I know. And I go, well, what could possibly be a new state of matter? We kind of are familiar with gases and
solids, liquids, and gases. We even allow for plasma in there now.
That's right. So this is a different state of matter. Now, this state of matter is important in quantum computing. Now, sometimes if you're developing something from a scientific perspective, you might develop it because it's fun or you've got a research grant. But if you can come up with a commercial application, hold back because there's going to be some extra money thrown at that.
Bingo.
If you can come up with a quantum computer or a quantum computing chip, then there's a fair bit of commercial outcomes that will come as a result of that. So Microsoft say they've got topological superconductivity. So things being superconductive sounds like a fantastic thing. It still needs to be near absolute zero. So that's still a bit of an issue to get around that sort of temperature, minus 273 degrees Celsius. Is that about right? So,
and I don't think we've gotten actually to minus 273.15, but I think we got to about 0.2 Kelvin,
right,
which is getting pretty close.
It's pretty cold.
Yeah.
That's right. I don't need my beers that cold. I thought you said.
Yeah, was that solid hydrogen that they created? Look, I'm clutching now, but anyway.
Yeah. So they believe you get down close to absolute zero, and with topological superconductivity, you've then got a quantum computing chip, they believe, that can be stable. And that's the big issue here. Google, you might remember we talked about in December, they said that they had a quantum computer that could do something in 5 minutes that would take a normal supercomputer 10 septillion years. So a bit faster than a supercomputer, okay?
Yeah, longer than the universe has been around.
That's right. So that was pretty impressive, but again, it wasn't stable and they couldn't keep the calculation going. Microsoft believe that by using this new state of matter and their new Majorana 1, the quantum computing chip, they believe that they've got a stable quantum computer that can actually do some real-world calculations. Now, again, no one's been able to look at this yet. No one's been able to test this out. No one's been able to say, hey, can I sit down at the keyboard and play for a little bit? Microsoft saying they developed this in-house, obviously. The chip combines indium arsenide and aluminium, as I said, near absolute zero, and basically go and work on these quantum computer calculations. Now, I don't know if I want quantum computing to happen because the amount of power we will have with quantum computing is incredible. So for climate change, absolutely fantastic. Predicting weather, absolutely fantastic. But then breaking previously unbreakable code. So if you've got something where you might say...
It's a can of worms, isn't it?
That's locked up by this incredibly complicated algorithm. No one could break that. Well, that was before quantum computing came along, and then it will be child's play to break some of these codes, some of these algorithms, some of these things that people
For the people
things.
currently building their doomsday bunkers just on the back of AI and worrying about AI, quantum computing has got the potential to blow that out of the water.
Absolutely right. Medical research, fantastic. Sustainable energy, fantastic. But AI and breaking past.
If everyone just uses it for good,
right.
we'll be okay.
That's right. Okay, let's make a rule right here, right now.
Everyone,
use
pinky promise everyone, please.
For good, that's it. So it's incredible, it's exciting and scary, but we're getting a step closer, I think, to quantum computing being real. Oh, gee, maybe it's real now, but real in the real world that we can go and actually use this.
Dear.
Maybe we'll have a toy. Maybe there'll be a Christmas in 10 years' time where you just buy your new quantum computing toy that does some incredible thing. But for the moment...
Can teleport.
That's right. Why not? Yeah, just something nice and simple.
And that's it for another episode, folks. I've got to race home and get stuck into some chores before my better half realises that I snuck out again just to hang out with my mates. Thanks for another cracking tech talk, Matt.
My pleasure. I'm going to look at my dark roof and see if all those things I'm doing for the environment, solar panels, EVs, electric things around the house, am I really doing something terrible with my dark roof? Do I need to go and repaint it some fluorescent colour?
I'm going off to make mine look like a Wham film clip from the 80s.
Yes, that's right. Perfect. I love it.
Thanks for tuning in to another freshly squeezed episode of Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. I'm your host, James Eddy, wishing you a happy and productive week ahead. We'll both be back in another week's time, serving up yet another episode, and we hope you can join us then. In the meantime, take care, and we'll see you then.